This guy applied to over 1,000 jobs, no offers, barely any interviews. So, what did he do? He stopped playing by the rules. He opened up Apollo.io, searched directly for managers, used Hunter.io to find their emails, sent a short, sharp message, and got hired almost immediately. And here's another case where a recent college grad got a CEO's phone number using Apollo and reached out directly about a chief of staff job. The CEO was impressed. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the tools and steps people are using to do this, starting with how to identify the right person at the company, how to find their contact info, and how to send the message that can change everything. Now, I'll be straight with you. As a hiring manager myself, this tactic is a double edged sword. It can absolutely work. I've always responded to everyone who reached out to me directly for a job, even if it was a polite no. I looked at the initiative and out of box thinking as a good thing, as long as the candidate didn't go full LinkedIn stalker mode. But it can also backfire hard if you do it wrong. For some hiring managers, you could come off as pushy, unprofessional, or hard to manage. So I'm not saying every job seeker should do this. My videos generally focus on the light side of the force. But if you're at the end of your rope, if you've applied to dozens or hundreds of jobs and heard nothing, if you've optimized your resume 6 ways from Sunday, then maybe it's time to stop playing by the rules and bring balance to the force. Before we get hands on, let's take a look at two main tools you can use. What's the difference between Apollo.io and Hunter.io? They both help you find emails, but they work a little differently. And depending on your situation, one might be better than the other. Hunter.io is the simpler one. If you already know the name of the person you want to contact, like Sam Altman, CEO at OpenAI, Hunter will help you figure his email out using the company domain like openai.com. You can also search the company itself and see common email formats like first.last@company.com and then just plug in the name. Apollo.io, on the other hand, is a more powerful tool, but it's a little more complex. If you don't know who to contact yet, Apollo lets you search by company, department, job title, and seniority. So if you're looking for anyone in engineering management, say at Shopify, Apollo can help you find names, titles, and sometimes even direct email addresses all in one place. So, which should you use first? If you already know who you want to reach, use Hunter.io. It's faster, easier, and doesn't require setup. If you are still figuring out who the right person is, start with Apollo.io, then use Hunter to verify or double check their email. Check out the description for links to both Hunter and Apollo. They're affiliate links that won't cost you extra, and you can use it for free for your initial searches. Hey, making these videos is a lot of work. If you get value from this video, please like and subscribe to help out my channel. Okay, let's go through a quick walkthrough of Hunter.io. Now, I'm going to pull up a little walkthrough onboarding video that helps go through the Finder email finding process. So I'll click on Get Started after I log into Hunter.io. And you can see it tells me if I go to the Finder portion of the tool, I start by entering a full name. So in this case, it's just going to enter Giovanni Lepori. Next, add the company or website that the person works at. Click on that. And in this case, it enters Hunter.io. Click on Find. And boom. It says we found the address Giovanni Lepori working at Hunter. And the green shield indicates that the email is verified and safe to use. Now, what you can do is you can save all of these contacts once you verified them as well by clicking this button over here. And what you can also do is if you have a whole bunch of names of contacts that you want an address for, you can bulk load them all and do it all in one go. I don't think for job hunters, you'll likely be using this capability. Okay, so in the hunter.io interface, this Finder tool, this Finder feature is the key thing that you'll be using. And we just did a quick demo walkthrough of finding an email by name. But you can also find an email by company. So, for example, if I plug in OpenAI and choose OpenAI as the company name, you can see that there's already a whole bunch of names and emails from OpenAI that I can see, like Scotty at OpenAI.com. Now, I'm not suggesting any of you email any of these people. This is for demo purposes only. But you can see that you can actually tell just by this lookup what the email address of somebody is at the domain. So now I know that most likely at OpenAI, everyone's email is basically just their first name. This is typically the case with companies who don't have tens of thousands of people. Okay, so it's very useful for you to be able to even just guess the email of who you're looking for. Let's try another company. Okay, and let's try another company. Let's say NVIDIA. Gonna click on that. And let's go down to the green verified ones. And you can see that for NVIDIA, the email format seems to be the first name initial and then the last name. You can see that for these green verified ones here. Okay. So if you're interested in contacting someone at NVIDIA and you know their first name and last name, you can try to figure out the format to email them directly with an email. Okay, now let's do a walkthrough of Apollo.io. You can see on the left hand side here, I'm going to focus first on the People tab. And this basically lets you look for people who you might be interested in contacting. Now, if I go to the persona, you can see that after I logged in and put in a bit of my interest info, it automatically created three types of personas that I can search by. I can search by HR managers, I can search for sales directors, and I can search for operations heads. And then you can see that I have some results that have popped up already. But let's create a new persona. So let's say I'm interested in a marketing role at a company. So I want to find marketing leaders. I'm just going to use their example and type in marketing leaders. And then for job titles, I'm going to look for at least a director level. And then for department and job function, I'm going to look for marketing. I click on save persona. Okay, now I've created the persona. As you can see, there's a lot of different options that you can use to fine tune this persona, but you can fine tune it to look for people who might be hiring for the positions you're interested in. So whether you might be interested in accounting, in finance, in marketing, in product management, in software engineering, in hardware engineering, um, in legal, whatever it might be, just create the persona for the types of person who might be hiring for the roles that you might be looking for. And you can customize this heavily. So it looks like a very powerful tool. Now I'm just going to click done. And then you can see that if I've now picked marketing leaders, let me uncheck this to show you what happens. Okay. You can see it's showing other things that I've searched out before. But if I pick on marketing leaders only, now you can see that I have a whole list of marketing contacts. And let's just scroll through this and see if there's any that are interesting. Okay, and you can see there are a lot of different options. There's pages 1 to 25 of a lot of records here. I'm just going to click and see if I can click on one of them, find out some more about the company if I want to. So you can see this is a very powerful platform. And if I click on one of the people's names here, I can go into it and then I can access the email. But of course, it uses credits, so I'm not going to do that. You can click on this. You have a certain number of free credits when you sign up for this, so you can do that. You can even access their mobile phone potentially. So you could send them a text message, just like the example I showed you earlier from the guy who contacted the CEO for the chief of staff role. Okay, so as you can see, this is a great way to fine tune using this people tool here. You can create different personas and fine tune exactly the kinds of people that you might be looking for if you don't know their names. This is a great place to start. Now, there's another thing that you can do is look at companies here. So if you are trying to figure out, hey, well, what kind of companies do I want to work for? you can simply go into companies and lookalike. Let's see, company and lookalike. Let's see, I can search for Google, and here you go. I can click on Google. It tells me all about Google, and it even gives me some names that I can double click on and get information for. Now, previously, noted that I had created a marketing leaders persona in the people tab. And if I click on the marketing leaders, then I can get specific information about different people who are marketing leaders at Google. Again, I'm not going to click on the actual button to reveal the email and phone number, but if you sign up for this platform, you can do that for yourself. Okay, one other thing that I think is interesting about the companies tab, I'm just going to clear all these filters to go back to the home screen, is that you can even search for number of employees. So say I'm only interested, let's say I don't want the huge companies of 10,000 plus employees, but I'm more interested in mid-sized companies, because there's less politics, more growth typically available if it's a growing company, then I can just select those companies that I'm interested in, sort of that mid-size range. And not only that, you can also filter by industry and keywords. So let's see, if I'm interested in computer software, for example, I can click on that. And then boom, I get all of the companies for computer software. And then under company keywords, I can also do things like search for keywords like cloud, AWS, if that's an area that you're interested in. Now, check this out. This is only for the paid or upgrade versions, but you can also search for companies based on the titles and the amount of jobs that they're hiring for. I haven't actually tried any of this functionality, but so I can't tell you how well it works. But this sounds like potentially a great tool because what you can do is actually figure out who's hiring and go straight to those people. Again, there are of course risks with these kinds of techniques. Okay, so let's say, well, I changed my mind, and as just an example, let's check out to make sure this is really working right. I'm going to say, well, I only want to work for the really big companies, the big companies that everybody knows about, because I think they're going to be safer in the long run. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying let's hypothesize this is what you are looking for. We can scroll down and say, yep, it's got all the big names in here. It's got Zoom, it's got Workday, it's got, let's see, some we probably haven't even thought of, SaaS. So, so some nice options to look at here. Okay, so overall, you can see that this is a really powerful platform to try to figure out not only the contact information, but who to contact. And then once you figure out the types of people to contact, you can double click and get specific contact information for people who might be hiring. And the contact information that you can get is not just their email, but also potentially their phone number. Okay, now let's take a look at what the original folks who used these techniques said, and also what some of the reaction to some of these techniques are. And I'll provide my perspective as well. So here, this person is obviously frustrated. He had a lot of advice, or she had a lot of advice saying, just keep applying, and it'll eventually work, or leverage your network, and maybe something will turn up. Well, I think these are the good initial basic suggestions. And I made a video previously on how to get a job in this environment. It's a very simple whiteboard video. But before you go on to techniques like these, I suggest you do try those other techniques. Make sure you have the basics right before going on to a step like this one. They just gave up after 20 tries of throwing it through trackers. And as far as the network, the person makes a good point that it's used by people who are already well established in their career. I get the point. Yes, it's definitely easier once you're more established in your career, but I would try also to be creative in areas where you can network with people, maybe at industry events and things like that, that he has not considered. So I don't think you have to be completely like a shot in the dark by going to random people, but you can creatively try to network in other venues as well. So in this case, the person did this for 1 week, about 50 to 75 emails, looks like pretty much cold emails, got some interviews, got some declines, and one job. Okay, so that's the success rate for this person. So if you kind of think of it as a risk benefit ratio analysis here, I mean, before 1,000 interviews, Very few interviews, no offers here, 50 to 75 emails, several interviews, and a job. It looks like the benefit is more efficient than what he was doing before. And this guy's even nice enough to provide the email or a sample of the email. And he says the secret is in the subject of the email. This is what he does. He says, "Your college, your major, grad seeking your guidance." And I think he's right. The subject of the email is critical. So then you basically acknowledge they're busy and make the email specific to the company to show you care enough to research them. In the middle, you briefly provide the qualifications and what you can bring to the company. And in the end, it's a polite closing with a call to action. That sounds pretty good to me. Here's somebody who feels some empathy toward their current situation, especially with new college graduates. And the problem that this person says is that if everyone tries this, it would be annoying to read through all the emails, and soon it would be just as useless to this trying to break to the ATS pool. I think there's validity to that. Good at working the edges, but this strategy doesn't scale at all. Certainly not enough to be good general advice. Well, I think that's true. I think it's not, well, perhaps, but I personally think this is very situational, and only you can decide for yourself if in your situation this is right for you. Now, this one is interesting. This is somebody who says, I'm a I'm glad this worked for you, but as a hiring manager, I would have never replied to you and maybe even block you. This person says they get so much spam and scam and cold emails that they assume you're running some kind of con. And then the person also says it defeats the purpose of hiring process pipeline. The person says, I hate how cold the world has become with the internet. But with the crappy people doing illegal and unethical things, it forces good people to follow systems to prevent bad actors. The person says, I'm glad this method panned out, but this is essentially being an aggressive salesperson playing by the numbers game. So if you were going for sales and marketing, then you are the right fit. And so essentially, here's the rub. Different hiring managers will feel differently about these kind of tactics. As I mentioned, for me personally, as long as it was a well thought out subject line, email, then at least I would give the candidate a chance. I would almost certainly look through the information and the resume because I like in some ways that someone has taken the time to research the company, research the role, tell me specifically what they can bring to the role, but for others, it might be very different. Now, someone actually replied back to the hiring manager who doesn't like this approach and said, well, I've had a lot of success with emailing. Don't take it personally. But some recruiters and hiring managers seem clueless. Hey, my channel name is Clueless Employee, so can't disagree with that. It helps to email them with a 2 to 3 line intro, and all of a sudden they want to interview you. Yeah, it's true. I've seen this. Sometimes interviewers are just so busy or they just don't know the industry. A lot of times in companies, you're paired with recruiters, through no fault of their own, just don't understand the specifics, the skills that are needed. And they're kind of just thrown into the game with very little to go on. This person says, maybe a process is better, but no process is perfect. If you have a strong process that gets you 90% of the way, then I can see why you would want to stick to the process. But if you truly want the best candidate, I don't know why you would leave out folks giving the extra effort. And my view is more in line with this person who responded to the hiring manager. I like this conversation. It's respectful. The hiring manager says, no offense taken at all. To clarify, it isn't that I don't appreciate the extra effort. It's that I'm slammed with recruiters trying to sell their service. And this is true. There are recruiters, there's all kinds of agencies that constantly reach out to companies and hiring managers and they get slammed. In fact, I don't even answer my phone these days unless I know who's calling, but they can always leave a message. And that's the key. There's always a way around if you can figure out how to do it respectfully. They often give unsolicited candidates info to show how they already did the legwork for me to get in the front door. I would have no way to distinguish your email from one of those cold email sellers, so you would get ignored because I assume it's a cold caller emailer. I have a personal policy not to do business with cold caller emailers. And then the person responds, well, now I'm thinking about what I can add to the message to make sure that when you see it, you don't think it's just another recruiter. That would really help me get through to more people, maybe candidate introduction or introduction for exposition. And I think this hits the nail on the head. So if you go with this approach, okay, you must be thinking that, hey, these managers are going to be slammed all the time with emails. They shouldn't think, just from reading your subject line, that you're somebody trying to sell them some kind of product or service. One of the ways you can get around that is by being very clear about your work history, about your, if you're just a fresh grad, your school. And as the original poster did here, position it more as seeking their input and guidance. As busy as people might be, many people do want to be useful, many people do want to be helpful. And if you can come across as looking for help, for guidance from someone who's been in the industry, or potentially even looking for a mentor, I'm not saying you should actively deceive people that you're looking for a mentor when all you're looking for is a job. Uh, but if you can make someone feel like they are in a position to be helpful to you, I think then that would greatly increase your chances of them replying, even if it's not to give you the job, frankly. Now, if you've seen my other videos, you know, I talk a lot about AI. So if you're having trouble personally with your situation, just plop it into a tool like ChatGPT or even X AI, Grok, Gemini, and brainstorm some ideas with AI on how to frame your email and your subject line so it doesn't come across as somebody who's in sales trying to sell a product, or a recruiter who's trying to basically get a headhunting fee by selling someone else's resume. Okay, now let's take a look at the X post where somebody emailed the CEO of a startup, and the CEO posted it on X to try to figure out whether this was a good move. So the CEO basically says, "Hey, is this text to me a green flag or a red flag?" I think he's basically looking for internet's advice on whether to hire this person who reached out to him. Okay, and then this is the guy who graduated from U Chicago, worked in IB. I think that's investment banking, consulting. Co-founded his own tech startup in college. Well, seems like a pretty good background. And he's basically looking for a chief of staff role at the CEO's company. One person says, "Hey, love the subtle hope you're getting enough sleep." So the CEO says, "I didn't get this." Basically, the person who texted the CEO is, kind of kissing up a little bit because implying that the CEO is working really hard and not even sleeping. Now, this is interesting. One person says he'll work hard, but will be a headache. Someone says that pushing, disregarding boundaries and process is a good trade in sales, but probably not for chief of staff. Well, what I'd say is that it also depends on the culture of the company. So before you join a company, try to get a sense of what the culture is. If you are too aggressive in the wrong culture, it might mean you're not a fit for that kind of company, and you could get pushed out. But conversely, if you are not aggressive enough in some cultures, you might also not be a fit, and you'll get pushed out. This poster said he got to the top of the stack, and you're talking about him. It's a dub in itself. It might be out of pocket and uncouth of him, but he got the attention, and that's important. And the CEO agrees. He says, truth. This guy says, this is very much how I started my finance career, but via phone call versus testing. Called the big boss, asked if I wanted to set up a call with him, and I said, no, let's do a meeting. This person says it's totally green for the position, not green as in inexperienced, but green as in green versus red. Is assertive, self-directed, friendly, without being too pushy. So I think this person thinks that it's a good fit for the chief of staff position, and they might actually be a problem in a more junior position. This person says red, not because that he reached out, because he has a startup and didn't say the name of it. So it looks like it's definitely polarizing, this approach. But there's more people that think it's a good thing to do rather than a bad thing. Now, I thought this response was especially useful. Good, bold, cold outreach. Bad, not being upfront about how he got your number and making it seem like it was a referral. Better, Drew, I'm in the process for chief of staff and I spoke with Alex last week. Alex is the recruiter and Drew is the CEO. I found your number on Apollo. I'm not trying to circumvent the process, but I do want you all to know how serious I am about this position. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to meet soon. I think this is an excellent way to send the message. It shows that upfront you understand the situation, you're being transparent about it, and you're simply doing all you can to make sure that the hiring manager knows your interest. But what do you think? Do you think these approaches are a good idea or a bad idea in your situation? Let me know in the comments below. And, my philosophy generally is try to shoot for balance. Well, that's all we have time for today. Until next time, stay savvy, my friends.